For the beer. Oh yeah, beer baby. In case you're curious, this is the Mind Haze IPA by Firestone Walker Brewing Company. This wouldn't be a books and beer tag without some beer. Salutations, I'm Becca. This is Words and Other Malarkey. This is the Books and Beer tag. This is a tag that I found by a booktuber named Kathy Trithert. I hope I'm saying that right, Kathy. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your last name. It's okay. My last name gets mispronounced all the time too. And when I get married, it'll get mispronounced probably also because my husband-to-be has a complicated last name too. Do you?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. There are two things I really love, and that's books and beers. So, like, why not combine them, right? But I was really super stoked that I found this book tag, and I really wanted to do it, so I'm doing it, and it's gonna be interesting, and I got a beer here, too. So, there are prompts. What she did was she made a list of different types of beer, and each beer has like a description, and so you pick a book that matches that description. It was kind of difficult. It took me like a whole week to like pick the ones I was gonna put in here. There's only one on here that I picked that I didn't actually finish, and that's the first one, which is a lager. The lager is widely consumed but not necessarily tasty, a book that is popular but not particularly interesting. And the one I chose is Fellowship of the Ring, J.R.R. Tolkien. I'm sorry, I love Lord of the Rings. I love what it's done for the fantasy genre. I love the movies. I've seen the movies a million times, but I tried to read Fellowship of the Ring twice when I was a teenager, and I could not make it past halfway, and I'm sorry. And I know that it is like iconic, but it is so boring, at least in the first half. I just couldn't do it. So that is the one for me that is popular but not necessarily interesting. Like, that doesn't mean it's not good. And I even said in like one of my other videos that like boring can still equal good. So like I stand by that. Like I'm not trying to like bash Lord of the Rings here. I'm just saying it's a lager. Alright, the next one is IPA, India Pale Ale, which is what I'm drinking here. You know, I used to really hate IPAs, and I really like developed a taste for them. I don't know. Anyways, an IPA, prepared for a long voyage, a book that took you on a very long trip. And for this one, I chose Airborne by Kenneth Opel. This is a whole series. I have not read the other books in the series. My sister and her fiance love them and keep telling me that I should finish the series. And I will one day, I promise, guys. But for now, the only one I've read is the first in the series, Airborne, which is about, it's kind of steampunky. It's set in this like kind of alternate industrial era where like there's airships instead of like ships, and this kid who's, I'm sorry, I can't remember his name right now. He works on an airship and they crash on an island, and he befriends this like scientist girl that was on the ship, and they are looking for these mythical creatures. It's really cool. It's a cool book, and you know, they travel all over like they're far away from where they start. So I consider that one a long voyage. There's definitely longer voyages out there. I could have picked The Martian for this one, but like he stays in one place for most of the time. But then again, they are on an island for most of the time in Airborne. Next on the list is a stout, which is Dark and Strong, a dark book that left you with wobbly legs. Now, I haven't read a whole lot of dark books, but I did just read Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, and that one was pretty dark to me. It ends really dark, and it has a lot of like dark implications. Also, like, I considered putting East of Eden down by John Steinbeck as like a dark book, but like it's not dark as in like gritty or like grim dark or anything like that. So that was the difficult one for me. Next is a bitter. I'm not sure I've ever had a bitter. Like, I've definitely had a lager, India Pale Ale, and a stout. I'm not sure I've ever had a bitter. Maybe I just didn't know it. That is a pale ale with angst, a book or character with an I'm different than everyone attitude. This one I knew right away. Paper Towns by John Green. Read it when I was in high school. Liked it at the time, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized I didn't like it. No offense, I'm sorry if this offends anyone, but I've never really been a fan of John Green. I know he's super popular. I don't like his books. I'm sorry. But Paper Towns, main character, basically it's about this guy who had a crush on this girl and she goes missing and leaves him a bunch of clues that like lead him around the city in an attempt to find her. And she was supposed to be like a really like complicated, mysterious person, and she just kind of struck me as like one of those like, yeah, I'm different than everybody else, like I'm not a normal girl, or like I'm not your average girl kind of character. And by the end she was really starting to annoy me. Maybe there was something I was missing, I don't know. I always try to give things the benefit of the doubt. It could just be my personal preference, but Paper Towns definitely struck me as a, you know, I'm different than everybody else, meh 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 kind of book. Saison. Saisons are good. I've had a couple saisons. That is extra bubbles and flavor, but less of a punch. A light read with something interesting. This one was hard for some reason because I didn't want to, I wasn't sure what qualified as a light read. I guess something short and easy to get through, which is most of the things I read. So I chose Princess of the Midnight Ball by Jessica Day George. You might hear me mention this book and its sequels a lot because I absolutely love this series, and it's probably one of my favorite series / books ever. I think it's actually called like the Princesses of Westfallen series, but I always have called it the Princess of the Midnight Ball series. You know, one is definitely shorter than the other. And this is a retelling of the 12 Dancing Princesses. It's a little darker and more complicated, and it's just a beautiful romantic retelling with great characters. My sister read it in high school, and then I read it, and we both absolutely loved it. We kind of bonded over it, which was cool, and like they remained our favorites. I've read them several times, and I really want to own them and reread them, and they are light reads. Next is Ale, Warm Fermentation Without Bitter Hops, a comfortable favorite book. So I had to think long and hard about this one, and I finally was like, you know what, I'm just going to come right out and say it, because there's absolutely no shame in saying this is a comfortable favorite book, and that is the Holy Bible, friends. I am Christian, and I'm not going to like flaunt that too much, but I do want to like put that up front, that like I'm Christian, I love God, and I love reading the Bible, and it is a book. I think people usually don't think of it as a book that you read for fun, I guess. I don't know, but it's a book that is really near and dear to my heart for so many different reasons. Yeah, the Bible. We had some technical difficulties and we had to pause for a while, so guess what that means? Another beer! This one's Space Camper, Cosmic IPA. Another IPA. I guess I really like IPAs now. So where were we? Next one on the list is Eisbock. Eisbock? Eisbock. This is a beer so strong it removes whatever freezes. A book with a society that is extremely cutthroat. By the way, if you hear weird sounds, it's my dog eating. Sorry in advance. It's a small apartment, okay? So for Eisbock, I chose The Uglies by Scott Westerfeld. I haven't read a whole lot of books that are super cutthroat. I'm just like not super big into like really grim, violent books. I mean, I read like The Hunger Games, and that's pretty cutthroat, but I felt like that was the easy out, so I went with Uglies. I read the whole series in high school. It's a really good series from what I remember, though like sometimes you read things and you go back and they're not as good, but I mean, I'm just rolling with it anyway. So yeah, this one is a society where, like a future where when you're 16 you go through an operation to become pretty. So everyone that looks normal is ugly, and then they become like basically just go through a lot of plastic surgery to look like supermodels, and then they're called pretties, and they get to live like in the nice rich city and be awesome. But the catch is that they get brainwashed and they're like really stupid and compliant. So the main character runs away so she doesn't have to go through that. And yeah, it gets pretty cutthroat in the sense that like from what I remember there was just like a lot of like, I don't know, manipulation going on, and like some of the body mod stuff is pretty like gnarly. So anyways, yeah, The Uglies, I'll stand by that. Next is a Gose. Gose? Goose? Gose? Gose. Gose. I'm just going to say Gose. G-O-S-E. This is sour and sometimes salty, a book with some acid or that made you salty. I got one. Oh yeah, I got one. This is one of the ones from Lessons from My Bookshelf. You can check out that video. The Kingdom Keepers by Ridley Pearson is about like Disney World, or like this group of kids who like go into the park at night as like holograms, and they're like fighting characters that have come to life. It's an interesting concept. It's super campy though, and like I liked it growing up, and then when I reread it a few months ago, I was like, there was just so many weird plot things and just bad writing, and I was just like really salty. Yeah, salty about this book. It was just not what I remembered it being at all, and I just can't get over that ending, honestly. It was just a piece of work. Next is a lambic. Lambic is a wild yeast beer fermented in old open barrels. A book with an outlandish premise that was worth the time you invested. Yeah, this one was pretty easy. Abraham Lincoln, Vampire Hunter by Seth Green Smith, right? Yes, I'm cheating, looking at my notes. It's one of those books that, you probably heard of the movie, maybe. I thought it was good. My family really likes it. We really enjoy it. We'll watch it around like Halloween. It's a little over the top, but like, I don't know. It's just a really enjoyable film to us. As weird as it seems to like put Abraham Lincoln and vampires together, the more you think about it, the more it kind of makes sense. So like, I don't know, outlandish premise, but when I read the book, I really enjoyed it. It's pretty much the movie. They didn't change a whole lot. And yeah, it was worth the time I invested. Next is a double, which is monastic brewing, because those monks know how to brew some beer. So a book so important to you that you had to read it at least twice. For me, this one is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. Have I read it twice? I think so. If not, then I definitely will. It's definitely one of my favorites. I also love the miniseries. I've seen that twice at least, so it's pretty close to the book. So yeah, Pride and Prejudice is a classic. You can't go wrong there, and I definitely need to own it so that I can read it again. Next is barley wine. So much alcohol that it can't be classified as mere beer. A book that should have been a series, or a series that packed a lot into the few books it had. For this one, I had to think, like, this one was a hard one for me, but I decided to go with On Such a Full Sea by Cheng Rei Li. And I read this a few summers ago. It's a dystopian novel. It takes place in this future where there was some kind of like devastation population-wise, so I'm pretty sure the population's a lot less, but it's mostly made up of Chinese Americans, and they live in like this city that's kind of like walled off from like the wilderness. There's a really rigid class system. It's really interesting. And the main character, her boyfriend goes missing because there's some kind of like sickness going around, and I don't know, they're like doing some weird research stuff. So she goes on like this cross-country trip to find him and learns a lot about her society and about what goes on outside the city, because like things are pretty okay in the city, but if you don't live behind the wall, like life is really hard. There's a lot going on in this book. It was very literary, very rich language. It took me a long time to read, and if I didn't describe it correctly, it's because I read it long enough ago that the details kind of escape me, but I do remember that the ending was basically a cliffhanger. I'm sure it was intentional the way it ended. I could have seen it being a series. There definitely could have been a second book. I wanted to know what happened next, but I don't think that it's the kind of book that will be made into a series. Yeah, so there's your barley wine. Last but not least is seasonal. So this is a beer with a limited brew window, a book or genre you can only read when you are in the perfect mood for it. I was gonna choose one that like I would only read around like a holiday season, but I decided like there aren't really any that I can think of, as mostly movies that I watch around holiday seasons. So I decided to go with The Ensemble by A.J. Gable. I read this one a few summers ago. I loved it. It's contemporary fiction, and I usually don't go for contemporary fiction, so this is definitely a genre that I have to be in the perfect mood for, or that really just has to like hit me the right way, and The Ensemble definitely did. It's about a quartet of string musicians, and that hit close to home because I have been in orchestra since like middle school, and so I understood the lingo and the world, and it was like a lot of like, interpersonal drama and stuff. It's following like the four members and their wives. I could think it like spans like 10 years or so, but it was really good, and like each part had like a little program with like classical pieces, and that really made me happy because I love classical music. So yeah, also it has a beautiful cover, and I'd want to own it just for the cover. Also because it was a good book, and I would own it. So yeah, and that's it. That's my beers and books and beers tag challenge. And yep, cheers to that. Man, so yeah, thanks Kathy so much for creating this tag. It was super fun, and I don't have anybody to tag, so I'm just gonna tag anyone, I guess, who wants to do this. That's what Kathy did, and I really appreciated it because tags can be kind of exclusive sometimes. So yeah, I was really stoked that like this was made available to everyone. Until next time, keep it weird, drink some beer, read some books. Yeah.